and welcome to the Good afternoon and welcome to the San Mateo Arboretum Society's hybrid seminar, Summer Rose Care for Beautiful Blooms, with our own Arboretum Society expert, Archana Singh. The program will be recorded. Before we start, a little information about what is happening at the Arboretum Society. Master Gardener plant clinics are scheduled from noon to 3 p.m., usually on the same day as our seminars or workshops through November. Our nursery in San Mateo Central Park is open Saturdays and Sundays, noon to 3 p.m. We have a wide variety of plants, many perennials, orchids, cactus, succulents, natives, and more. We accept donations of plants and cuttings, which are cared for by our volunteers and then put up for sale. Payment is by credit or debit card, Apple or Google Pay. No cash is accepted. The nursery may occasionally be closed, so check our website, sanmateoarboretum.org, or call us for updated information. While you're in Central Park, visit our newly renovated fairy garden, sun and shade demonstration gardens, the butterfly humming garden, bird garden, and of course the rose garden. And don't miss the newly installed native garden next to the north gate. All these gardens are maintained by Arboretum Society volunteers. Now, let's get on with today's program. We are extremely fortunate to have Archana as the Arboretum Society's rose expert. She's been growing roses for over 25 years, and her spectacular garden, which you'll see many of you see a photo of right there, is filled with 75 roses and more than 150 different types of plants selected to attract birds, butterflies, bees, and other pollinators. Welcome, Archana.
Thank you, Susan. Hello, everyone. So thank you so much for joining me this afternoon for a talk on how you can care for roses during summer to ensure beautiful and profuse blooms. So when people talk about rose care, what immediately comes to mind, the first task that they think of is rose pruning, the pruning that happens during the winter dormant months. And it may come as a surprise to most people that, yeah, you'll have to.
The settings changed when the recording started.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to advance the slide. Okay, here we go. So it may come as a surprise to most people that when you prune a rose, you are actually not impacting its ability for flower production. So what does that mean? The pruning that you've done back in January, December, that's not going to help so much with what we're talking about today, which is how do you maximize bloom and how do you get your rose to repeat bloom throughout the year? So we're going to take a look.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work with the double screen.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just ask you to advance. Yeah. All right, so what's the agenda for today? So we said, hey, rose pruning doesn't help much with maximizing flower production. So what can we do? What are the things, the techniques that we can follow that will actually get roses to repeat and repeat abundantly? So there are things that you can do now and in the summer months for that. And also, of course, there's some things that you can do throughout the year to care for your roses that also maximize bloom. And now, healthy roses are great performers in the garden, not surprising, right? So we do want to focus a little bit on disease and pests that may plague roses that we grow in the Bay Area. And so a good part of handling disease is recognizing disease and pests, is recognizing what you're dealing with. So we will spend some time in the second half to kind of go over what we can expect to see here. And then finally, I really want to carve out some time for an open Q&A because I don't want this to be a monologue. I really want to hear from you, want to have you ask your questions. As Susan said, we've got several folks, Irv, Marnie, Carol, and of course, Susan herself, all volunteers at the Rose Garden. So, we can try and answer those questions for you. Right. Okay. So in the first part, we're going to talk about those rose care tasks. What are they? I bring this up again to highlight it's not the pruning that causes this repeat bloom. In most rose books or even online, let's say, YouTubers, you're not going to hear this information because in some ways it applies locally to us here in the Bay Area. We live in a very benign climate to grow roses. And so while others will start talking very soon about how the hot weather, you shouldn't fertilize your roses, well, I'm going to tell you something very different. Okay, so for, this recording will go on to YouTube. So if anyone listens later and they're not from the Bay Area, unfortunately, this information may not apply to them. Gardening is local. Rose growing is certainly very local to where you're growing your roses. And so in the Bay Area, many roses have the ability to repeat multiple times through the year. And we're going to maximize that. Okay, the next slide. All right, so as I said, there are things that you can do now in summer months. So right now we're enjoying the magnificent blooms that the roses are putting out in their first flush, right? So while we're enjoying that, I want you to also start thinking that there are things that you can do now, which will help you enjoy blooms later in the year as well, not just now. So Kara, one more click. No, that's okay. Because of the Zoom recording, we're trying to get everything so that we get the recording done properly, and that's causing a little bit on the focus. All right, so what's the first thing that you can do, and you can do now? Remove those old dead blooms. It's called deadheading. Okay, very simply. The next one. All right, now here is my number one tip. I've been doing this for more than 15 years, and it really works. Feed your roses when they are in peak bloom, as they are now, with a quick release liquid fertilizer. Okay. Then roses, gosh, they really do not like being heat or water stressed. They will sulk if they're stressed like that. And so any measures that you can take to prevent heat and water stress, like simply increasing the amount of water that you give roses, do it in the hot days, windy days, or using a shade cloth, it really helps the roses, put forth those later blooms. All right, and then one more click. And then I said healthy roses, more performant, so stay vigilant and make sure you're handling diseases and pests. Now, this is a great list, and we'll go into the details later, but I'm a very realistic, practical person, or looked in another way, I'm a very lazy person. So here is how I try to get to these tasks. So one more click, please. This will be, yes. Okay. So one of the things that I like to do is get out for a few minutes in the morning. So I drink tea, not coffee, but I take my teacup in hand, and there I am walking around, and among the rose world, there's a phrase, it's called walleting and salotting, which is walking and looking at things and staring and looking at, whatever, walleting, let's go with that. It's a lot of what I do. I'm enjoying the garden, but I'm also observing. And I will go and, oh, look, this rose, a lot of dead blooms. I'll deadhead a few right there, okay? The other, and this was life-changing for me in terms of working in the garden. I now work in 15-minute sprints. the days get busy. You've got, other things that are higher priority. But if you can get out for a short period of time, whatever time period works for you, right? Focus not on the task that needs to be completed, but just getting out and working for that, whatever you've time boxed. It is, you feel unburdened instead of feeling overwhelmed by all the tasks that you've got to do. You're out there and you're getting something done, and that's rewarding. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, challenged by what you've got to do, try these time box sprints. All right, and then like I said, so there are a lot of things that you do in the summer months. That's when the roses need it. But there are also things that you can do, throughout the year that also go a long way in getting roses to repeat bloom, and to not just repeat bloom, maximize those repeat blooms. So Kara, if you would. And I'm sorry, we could have made this easy and just done everything on one slide, but I had to put in animation. Okay, so add some slow release fertilizer to the, throw some slow release fertilizer out in the ground around the roses. So you finish pruning, that can be a little bit challenging. Take some time, 2-3 weeks later, a month later, throw it out there. Roses love it. They're pushing out all that new growth. Now they've got the fertilizer. It really makes for some amazing profusion of blooms. All right, then keep your roses nicely mulched, right? Conserve all that water you're giving them. And then this is another, which I like to do, and we do this in the rose garden here at Central Park. So we add, so I like to add compost or some manure in late autumn, take advantage of the winter rains that we get. So that gets all the good stuff sucked down to the soil. So you're feeding the soil. Now, again, one more click. Reality, just do what you can when you can, right? You don't have to do everything every year. In fact, you don't have to get to every single rose. Choose that special rose and maybe give that some attention. And once you've done this for a couple of years, I really mean it. Like 1 year you skip and the roses don't care. They've somehow built, some extra oomph in them. So get to things when you can. And I say this because in the rose garden, when we lay down compost, we can only do it in March. That's the time that works. That's when we can mobilize the volunteers, mobilize the public. Autumn does not work for us. Our roses aren't happy. So ideal, late autumn, do it when you can, right? And another thing, try to get maybe your family involved, right? And what a great way to get kids. I see some people laughing here. What about kids? Get your kids out into the garden, work with them, get them off the, iPads and phones, and some quality time together. So that's another way to get motivated to get out into the garden and do these kinds of things. All right. Okay. So now we're going into the nitty-gritty details, the what and the how. But I always like to understand the why behind things. I think that really changes how you approach things. So I'm going to share some of the why with you as well. All right, so deadheading. So what is deadheading? It's the removal of old, spent, dead blooms off the rose bush. One more click. So why do we do it? Well, it keeps the rose bush looking good and the garden neat and tidy. Who likes to look at, something like this, right? No one wants to. Oh, okay.
For the people online, go ahead.
No one wants to see something looking like this. And this is probably neater, right? It's a lot of times it's those brown old petals. So let's keep everything neat and tidy. But what is pertinent for us as we're talking today, we want to encourage repeat bloom. Okay, the next slide, please. So deadheading encourages repeat bloom. And now I'm going to come to the why. So like every species on our planet, plants, they have an innate desire to reproduce, right? Roses. So what does the reproductive cycle of plants and roses look like? Well, they produce flowers. The flowers get pollinated. The fruits develop, they mature, they produce seeds, and the seeds give rise to new plants. Okay, what happens when we deadhead? We stop fruit production. So this is what I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
This is what the rose fruit looks like. Okay. As it matures, we start calling it a hip. And that's what you want to cut off the plant. So we are stopping that fruit production. So what happens? That's a signal to the rose to restart the reproductive cycle. And what does that mean? More flowers. Okay. Now, this is true for the majority of roses, which are repeat blooming roses. It's in their genetics, right? But some roses, I mean, not a problem. They will, send up, I mean, the blooms will dry off, but they're already sending up new shoots. And some, my God, even if there is one fruit left on the bush somewhere interior, which you haven't spotted, will not flower. I've done my job. I've produced seeds, will not flower. So you will have to learn how your rose bushes perform. They're all going to be different, right? But so it's in the genetics. And therefore, if a rose is a once blooming rose, doesn't matter how much you deadhead, it will not repeat bloom. Okay. All right. The next slide, please. And I promise you, Kara, we are going to soon not have this animation, but okay. Now, people laugh at me, but I will tell you that roses will tell you where they want you to make the cut. So when you have, I think this will work. So when you have, imagine this, sorry, for the people on Zoom. So imagine this on the rose bush, right? So it was attached to the rose bush. And you're going to say, okay, where do I cut off these blooms? Where do I deadhead? So if you read rose books, if you look online, you're going to hear something like, look for the first set of leaves that are five petaled, five leafed, or go like 4 or 5 leaf nodes below. Well, guess what? The rose is telling you something different. I know for the people on Zoom, it's going to be difficult, but I'm going to try. For those of you in the room, can you see this little thing coming up, little growth coming up? And let me just show for the people on Zoom. Okay, so this is the growth that I'm talking about. Guess what? It's literally on the first leaf set. This is where this rose is going to push up new growth, and that new growth is going to end in blooms. Okay, why is this important? By the way, there are buds or growth buds in the axils below the stem as well. You could cut anywhere and it will not damage the plant. But I don't know about you, but I am greedy for flowers, and I am greedy for a lot of flowers and a lot of flowers quickly. Because if I can get faster repeat bloom, then I can push my roses to bloom, maybe not 3 times a year, but 4 times a year or 5 times a year. So now what I want to do is I want to cut right where the rose is telling me that it is going to send out new growth. If I cut below, it will send out new growth too. But roses like to bloom at a particular height. So what the rose is going to do, if I've cut down below, it's going to send out growth and only bloom when it gets to that height. Whereas if I cut higher up, it's got a shorter distance to grow and it will flower faster. Okay. All right. So sorry, Kara, go ahead. And I think I just yeah. So look for, yeah, you can pass that around. Thank you, Susan. So look for that swelling growth bug. The roses will guide you. Different roses, different things. There are some, you're not going to believe it. It isn't even on the leaf axil. They will have a growth right at the, like literally at the bottom of the old set of flowers. So just look for that. And then how do you make the cut? It's very standard, about 1/4 of an inch above that leaf node where that growth is coming from. Use clean, sharp pruners. That all remains the same. And then I always like to caution on weaker, smaller plants, young plants. Just go easy. Inch or two is more than enough. So literally, I will, just like for small plants, just cut right at, where the roses are. And then easy deadheading, I just like to snap off, right? So I'll do that again, just snap off. So I don't even have my pruners out. I've got my tea mug in one hand, and there I am, just snapping things off. Okay, all right. So, right, what we said, my most important tip. So you feed with a quick release fertilizer, right? Why? Because producing flowers takes a lot of energy from the plants, right? I mean, as human beings, when we produce a baby, that is really hard on the mother, right? It takes a lot out of the body. It's the same thing with plants. It's a lot of energy, nutrients required to push out those flowers. So when you hit them with that quick release fertilizer, they have the nutrients they need to push out the next set. All right, just go ahead and do all of them. So what are we talking about? Quick release fertilizer. So any balanced liquid fertilizer, just avoid the high NPK numbers. So when you look at the packet, the nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, potassium, you want something balanced. So a good balance is like a 10-10-10, but a 4-6-4, those all will work. Do not try the 50-100-50 that they, say produces a lot of blooms. The plants can't take it in. You're just wasting money, frankly, because those are more expensive fertilizers. I just buy whatever's on sale or whatever's available. These are the inorganic fertilizers. They are not organic. So if you garden organically, let's chat in the open discussion because, I can talk to you about how plants take in the nutrients and why organic, inorganic fertilizer, in this case, doesn't really matter. Okay, how? Just follow package directions. That's what I do. And then just make sure that, you're watering the plant thoroughly so that it can actually take those nutrients in. Just don't do a little squirt. Use the whole watering can, for example. Okay. When? We already said it. During the first bloom, peak flush is ideal. Okay. And then we've talked about why plants need the energy, the nutrients. Okay. Then next, preventing heat and water stress. So you've got some, yes.
Is that the only fertilizing that you do during the year, just during the first flush?
No. So usually in spring, I lay down some slow release fertilizer, as I mentioned. So this would be, in terms of a quick release, this is the only time that I use a quick release.
So, I'm sorry, but.
Oh, and for the people on Zoom, I'll just repeat the question. The question was, is this the quick release at this time, is this the only time that I fertilize? And my answer was no. I actually put down some slow release fertilizer in spring. Yes.
So you don't do any other fertilizing during the summer?
So second question was, do I do any other fertilizing during the summer? Not, I would like to. I would like to be able to, during midsummer sometime, put out a, second round of slow release fertilizer. I think that helps too. But that's something, summer is tough, right? There's so much going on. I very rarely, even though I have all good intentions, I very rarely get that second round out. But if you can, that's always good. Yeah. All right, so watering, whether you've got drip set up or you've got sprinklers or you hand water, just remember that, the next, this thing, just remember that, again, roses, they need, just like they need food, they need a good water supply to produce those blooms. And you don't want roses to go into heat or water stress. And therefore, during the summer months, during the hot days and windy days, I don't know about you, but I'm in a very windy area. The roses start, and all plants really get dehydrated really easily in those winds. So again, to conserve the moisture, add a layer of mulch. That always helps. And then use a shade cloth if you need to, especially if your roses are in a location where they're getting that hot afternoon burning sun, or even worse, as is in my case, my house faces due west, and the upper story windows just end up reflecting and burning plants. And so I actually have to use shade cloths, that I just move over during the summer months. Because I've had a rose that got sunburned. The cane just blistered and split open. And it was a relatively young rose, and I lost it. And yeah, so yeah, roses, like I mentioned before, they do not like being water stressed. And, they get sulky. How do they respond? Will not bloom, right? So, all right. So now handling disease and pests. So what is your best defense? A healthy rose, right? Let's start with the healthy rose. The second best defense is just observation, right? When you're out there enjoying the blooms, also look to see, are the roses, starting to get any kind of disease or pests attacking it. So when you're vigilant and you can catch outbreaks early, you can deal with them better. And a big part of handling disease is understanding, recognizing them. So we will spend some time actually going through all the common diseases and pests. And then, one more, Kara. Let the beneficials and birds come and eat those pests off your roses. It is such a joy to watch. So I get aphids on my roses, and then the birds come out. And oh my gosh, it's so wonderful. And I don't have a picture because usually I'm just so excited to see it. And, the birds just come quickly anyway. But, they've got the rose, they'll hang on, the rose will dip, and they're pecking away at the aphids. It's just so marvelous, right? And then if you must use chemical intervention, our rose garden here at Central Park is completely spray-free. I garden completely spray-free. That's been almost 25 years now, not a single chemical at all. Sometimes some very dilute soap spray for the aphids if it's really bad. In my garden, I tolerate it and just let the birds get to it. And so follow instructions if you are going to use chemicals, and please keep in mind that even the organic pesticides and fungicides can harm the beneficial insects. Okay. All right. So, healthy roses. Get off to a good start by choosing disease-resistant roses. The wonderful thing with the rose breeding in the last several decades is they have been focusing on disease resistance. And it means that you can pretty much get any type of rose that you would like disease resistant. Okay, so you can, read online, see what people are saying about disease resistance, and choose the rose accordingly. Site your roses. 4 to 5 hours of sun is ideal in our area. Again, yeah. Anything more, I think, can cause issues as well. And then choose a spot that has minimal root competition. I found that roses just do not like root competition, right? So no nearby trees. If you do have trees, consider using containers. And then what we've already covered, provide that adequate food and water, okay? All right, so now let's take a look at what disease and pests we can expect here. So fungal diseases, we have rust, powdery mildew, black spot, anthracnose, and cercospora is the most common. And because of our microclimates, right? I mean, I can move 5 miles away, come here to San Mateo. I live in Foster City, and the diseases are completely different from what I get. I'm much cooler, windier. I get anthracnose and cercospora. I very rarely find it on the roses here in Central Park. So it's good to know what is out there here in the Bay Area, and then what you find in your garden would be a subset, could be a subset. And if you're the lucky one, not see anything at all, that's happens too. All right, by disease-resistant varieties, plant your roses in the sunny sites, maintain a good air circulation around your rose, and then picking affected leaves really helps. So we have one rose in the garden. So after the presentation, if you want to go see, there's a rose called Elle. She's right by the gazebo. And every spring, early spring, she gets covered in rust. Covered. And Susan is, her benefactress, because she gets out there and she will pick all the new leaves, rust-covered new leaves off Elle. And that's it.
Completely defoliated.
Yeah, completely defoliated. And after that, Elle is fine and sends out these magnificent blooms. Okay. And then also when you're pruning, if any of you have attended my pruning seminars, one of the things that I highly recommend people do here is actually strip off leaves. I found that too helps with, kind of suppressing or decreasing the amount of disease you see later. All right, now very quickly, we will go through these different types. So I want you to get two things. There's a lot of detail here, two things. What does the disease look like, and how does one address it? Okay, so rust. It is a problem in California. It is a problem in the Bay Area. Many of the older roses are actually very prone to rust. Okay, so the newer roses do a lot better. And again, minor infestations. If you see it in spring, pick off the leaves, see if that helps, right? And then young roses sometimes will exhibit rust. So give the rose a chance to grow up and get some disease resistant. And then any late season rust on the leaves, and I kind of showed the difference. So notice like those black grainy things as well, in addition to the orange stuff. That is usually the late season. So if you see something like this, and that's the only time you see rust on your roses, and that's the end of the season, you see it in December, January, don't worry. Yeah, it's just old leaves that the rose is ready to get rid of. just getting attacked by disease. You don't have to worry. Okay. And then just one more thing about rust. If you see a rose that just gets rust every year, all the time, unless it's a rose that you're sentimentally attached to, consider replacing it with something, that is more resistant. Okay. Powdery mildew. Unfortunately, powdery mildew is a factor of our weather, where we get dry summers and cool nights. So hot days, warm days, and cool nights. And that just causes powdery mildew to, go rampant. And so, again, you can try picking off a few leaves. It will get, as in this picture, on the rosebud also. Usually as the leaves mature, the buds mature, the powdery mildew goes away. But if it's really unsightly, coming back all the time, consider replacing and buying resistant varieties. But otherwise, overhead watering helps. And for some reason, roses with like a more glossy foliage are better able to fight off powdery mildew. And there are some people who have found here in the Bay Area baking soda plus, I should remember this off the top of my head. I'll follow up on this, but there is baking soda and something, Epsom salts, that's right, which actually help with control powdery mildew. And then whatever the people on the East Coast say about all the stuff that they do, which helps powdery mildew go away, no, it's just a factor of the climate we grow our roses in. Yes,
So
Kara.
like baking soda and Epsom salts, is it in a liquid or is it powder?
It's powder, and then you just mix in water and you can spray. Yeah. Okay, black spot. Raise your hand, how many of you have had black spot?
Yes.
Probably, yeah. The good news, unlike people who grow roses, again, East Coast, Midwest, the roses that get a black spot here do not, the black spot doesn't affect our roses here in a way that it impacts either their bloom production or their vigor. Unfortunately, in other places, black spot can be so harmful to the plant that the rose just gets weaker and weaker and finally just gives up. So we don't have that problem. It's more, for most part, it is just unsightly. You don't want to see these leaves. So providing good air circulation certainly helps with black spot. So what I like to do on some roses at this time of year, so they're finishing their first or even second flush, and the leaves and stems are so thick, I will go in and I will reach into interior branches and start cutting leaves and stems back, just thin out the rose bush. And that really helps with black spot. So I've got Julia Child, which we also grow in the garden, and I do that with her every year. If I don't, she looks 10 times worse than what it shows in the picture. Okay. I show anthracnose and cercospora in case you live in areas that get a heavy marine influence, San Francisco, Millbrae, right? Like once upon a time, Foster City. I still get anthracnose in my garden. I still get cercospora. Both of these pictures are from roses in my garden. Again, unsightly, I'll get a few leaves, but nothing enough that forces me to want to do anything about it. Okay. All right, what are the common pests? Aphids, something called rose slugs, which are the larvae of sawflies, leaf cutter bees, leaf hoppers, and various beetles. And the scourge in my garden, the Hoplia beetle. Okay, so aphids, we talked a little bit about it. They suck the sap off the young shoots. Most of it is just unsightly. I have never seen a case where the aphid attack has been so bad that the roses fail to bloom. It's just a little bit icky to see, right? Knock off with a jet of water, hose it off, put on gloves and just squish them off, like pull them off. Do nothing, just let the birds come. And that's what I do. And interestingly enough, it's just amazing. If I have gone out and if I squish the aphids off the roses, the birds don't come. They don't like that. So I have learned, much as I want to get rid of them, to just take a step back. The next day, the birds will be there. The aphids will be gone. And then really bad infestations, just as I mentioned, mild soap spray. Don't use a detergent. Ivory is good. I think in the garden we use Palmolive, Dawn, I think. Yeah. All right. Rose slugs. So who has seen damage like this? Some lacy damage. Yeah, one or two hands. You have to look on the underside of the leaves. And if you see in the leaf at the bottom middle, there's a tiny caterpillar-like thing.
Yeah.
It's really tiny. At most, they will be, not even a quarter of an inch, less than a quarter of an inch. Hard to spot. The way you see is when you see the damage, the leaves have been skeletonized because they suck from underneath. The only thing that you can do is hand pick them off. And I will tell you, and I've shared this story a few times already in my previous seminars, but I will say it again because it was so effective. One year I had rose slugs. I cannot tell you what a bad attack on a whole bunch of my roses. I got my daughter and her friends to come in. I said 10 cents for every rose slug, keep counting, squish them. And I'm telling you, it was the best $20 in ice cream that I've ever spent. Those slugs were gone. So the reason I like to share this story is because, there are things that you can spray like BT, which is a bacteria which attacks caterpillars. But, these caterpillars are on the underside. You just can't get to spraying them. And so, when any chemical it's either ineffective or it doesn't serve the purpose, it's best to avoid. So, unfortunately, large infestations can really just take down, all the leaves. All right, this is what it looks like from the top. And so if you see this skeletonized, lacy-like, that is rose slugs. Most of the time, the slugs have already matured and gone. You'll just see the end result. Yeah. All right. Hoplia beetles and other beetles. There are a few different ones, cucumber beetles that will chew some flowers. For the last 5 years or more, I've been having these Hoplia beetles. They feed on light-colored roses, so all my icebergs and light pinks. I have to go and hand pick them off. Susan has watched me do that. Yeah, just one of those things that you live with. The birds, I've started to see birds come and get them. But sometimes I get their life cycle several times a day. So, I know I first see one, the next day I'll see like a couple, and then the third, fourth day, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get out there. So yeah. Again, you just live with it. And thank God they're not Japanese beetles. So yes, question.
Those like the Cucurlio beetle?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they're a little smaller and they don't have, those beetles have like, not antennae, but like claw-like thing,
Yeah,
just
they're
there's,
like-
yeah, side. Oh, I'm sorry. So the question was, are they like the Cucurlio beetles? So yes, something like that. any beetle that will chew your flowers is, yeah. Handpick, really, let the birds get them, right? And usually they're the light colored roses that get affected. Okay, leaf hoppers. So this is very, very much magnified. The middle picture shows at the bottom of that top leaf, yeah, thank you, Kara. So that's about the size, so you can see really tiny. And the same thing, the larvae, which is on the left inset, will suck the sap from the underside of the leaves. Usually you kind of see their, when they molt, the skin left behind. Let me see, sometimes I will have something, I don't see it on the back of these leaves. But again, very ugly. Sometimes it can be on the entire bush, just doesn't look good. But I do want to point out, I'm showing you the different pests that can attack your roses, but you really don't have to take action because they don't impact the roses so much that it affects their bloom production, or so much that, you have to consider getting rid of the rose. Okay. Then leaf cutter bees. They are bees. So they will make these circular cuts in the rose leaves to line their nests. And it is so much fun watching them. They come, hover, and then start cutting. I mean, it's just amazing, these little circles on your leaves. They're pollinators, plus there is no effective control. And so please, they're pollinators. Just let them be, right? Okay, beneficial insects. I will strongly urge you to get on the web and look for pictures of beneficial insects, because it's so important to recognize what they look like. And what you see in the picture, the one on top, and in the entire photograph below, this is ladybug larvae. Ladybug larvae can eat up to 400 aphids in one go. Okay, so they eat more aphids than the adult ladybugs. And I have to admit, many, 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 many years ago, when I was out in my garden, I saw this little creature and I'm like, it looks so awful. It's got to be bad, right? And I hate to admit, but I squished it. And I mean, it bothers me even till today, right? So I urge you, get out there, take a look at, I've listed some of the beneficials, take a look at what they look like, take a look at what their larvae look like, because they are your friends. They're helping you with those pests and disease. Okay. All right, so recap. We're looking for maximizing bloom production. We're looking for getting as many repeat blooms through the year as possible, right? That's our goal. So summer, what are we doing? We're deadheading. We're trying to feed the roses with that quick release fertilizer. We're going to try and do our best to increase water supply. Even in those drought years, I collected water, washed vegetables, collected that water, drove my family nuts, but I tried to, save as much water as I could so I could get those to the plants. So anything that you can do to increase that water supply will always help. Watch out for windy, hot days, and then stay vigilant, right, for disease and pests. And then other times of the year, right? Put down some slow release fertilizer, early spring, maybe mid-year as well. That's okay. And then keep your roses mulched, and don't forget that compost or manure. That's probably my second biggest tip after the quick release fertilizer is the compost or manure. All right. Oops, that's out of order. Okay. And so what are we aiming for in the end, we want our roses to be healthy and happy, right? Because healthy, happy roses, they're just such a joy in the garden. And choose your disease-resistant rose, site them in a good spot. If you don't have a good spot, a rose bed, put them in containers. They do very well in containers. Give them the water they need, feed roses, feed the soil, and you're going to be surprised at the reward you're going to get by caring for your roses this way. The blooms can be just magnificent. So if there is a magic formula, because a lot of people who visit my garden start like, what's your secret? What do you do? Right? Start with disease resistance, good soil, food, water, and that's a rose that performs just beautifully. Okay. All right, so just a couple of pictures. This is Julia Child in her first flush, that's on the left. And I can never get a picture when she's in complete full bloom. I just somehow miss it. And then, I mean, she's just like, I can't even see a leaf on her when she's in her peak bloom. And then I get sometimes, most of the times, if I can get to that deadheading right away, she will actually flower again, a second bloom in May itself, so April, May, and then the third flush in June. And that's when I have, you know, a couple of different companion plants that join in with those blooms. All right, and then one more. So in terms of profusion, I think Princess Anne in my garden is pretty much the rose, like, oh my God, just gets covered in blooms and they smell so good. They waft, you can be, you know, several feet away and you can start smelling this absolute lovely fragrance. So in the picture on the left, I think this is in May. This is, the flush has been on for some time. As you can see, I have not got to deadheading. And then on the right top is July. And then in September, Princess Anne just comes back with not as, you know, profuse as in the first flush, but an amazing autumn flush as well. And many roses will do that. Many roses, you'll have a great bloom in spring and a really surprising good bloom in autumn. And there are one or two roses, they're spring flush, you're like, eh. And then, you know, in September, October, you're like, wow, what time of the year do you think it is? So yeah, roses, they do surprising things. All right, and I think I've timed that nicely because I did want to spend a good chunk with the Q&A. So, right, okay. So yes, the first question.
Several very old roses. I transplanted from my mother's garden when she passed away. So they're like 70 plus years. Yes. And is the care the same for the older roses as the more modern?
Yeah. So the question was, how do you care for old roses? The person has, you know, roses that are almost 70 years old. Kara, would you mind just continuing down on the presentation? Because I actually have a repository of questions. Let's just keep going down until we get to caring for old roses. Should be coming up soon. I gotta stop with the animation. God. Okay. Yeah, we'll go over it. Sorry, this is, how do I propagate fragrant roses, soft flowering roses, blue color roses? How do I rejuvenate an old rose? Okay, so if your roses look a little bit sad in the sense they have just one or two canes, right? Is that what they look like? Or,
Good.
Okay,
Some
okay.
old branching, but.
yeah,
But they're getting very tall. It's mostly tall.
okay, all right. So there are two things, and I think both approaches for these different scenarios are important. So one is you can just have old roses and they're doing fine in the sense they're productive, but they're old. As I mentioned, roses like to get to a certain height and flower. And so in this case, it looks like the roses are not weak or not doing poorly. It's just how do you deal with them? So the first question that I would ask, is the rose a once blooming rose or does it bloom multiple times in the year? Okay, so it's a repeat blooming rose. So very much the care is what we have already outlined. Now, you can consider cutting the rose back a little bit more. So on some roses, you can do some, deeper summer pruning. What I would advise, do it first on just a couple of canes. Don't do it on the entire rose bush, because without knowing what rose it is, I hesitate to say, oh yeah, chop it back. Because I had a rose, a tea rose. So these are different from hybrid teas. These are older roses, tea roses. And my rose mentor had told me, do not cut back a tea rose. They do not like being pruned. Don't cut them back. So for many years, I followed that advice. And about 3 years ago, I read one of the other Rose people I like to follow. She's based in the UK. She's same Rose, Marie Antoinette. She said, oh, I cut mine back every year, not a problem. And I was like, you know what? Mine is grown too big. It had already been like, 7, 8 feet wide, and I really wanted to cut it back. It's like, should be okay. Cut it back, not by much, maybe about half. It died.
Well,
Died. And so local advice, I will not listen to advice from UK growers, right? They have to do what they have to do for their climate, right? Not our climate. Okay, so in your case, I would just try and see if you can cut back just maybe 1 or 2 branches, see how it does this year. If it does okay, then next year you could consider the other part of the bush. It'll take a little bit to get it balanced, but at least it's not going to die on you, right?
Her oak palm took it very well. I tried the alfalfa pellets.
Yes,
that worked
that
nice.
helps. So if you've been reading what's on the slide, that's for people who also have, these old roses, 1 or 2 canes, 1 or 2 flowers. Maybe it's a rose that was in the garden when you moved into the house you're in, right? How do you, address that rose? And so a lot of times you'll find mulch, stones, all sorts of things, start clearing things back, add some, remove all the weeds, add some fresh soil, some compost, things like that. And then try and cut back 1 of the canes, see if it'll give a basal break using alfalfa pellets. That's just an amazing way to get roses to, get these new shoots coming out. We call them basal breaks. And then make sure they're well watered, and add that slow release fertilizer. Yes. Yes. How can you tell if there's a nutrient deficiency? So that's actually a great question. And I, on purpose, do not have any pictures of leaves showing magnesium deficiency and this deficiency and that deficiency, simply because it's actually very difficult to pinpoint what is the deficiency without doing a soil test. So on the web, you'll find a lot of information, like pretty good websites with these pictures of all this deficiency. When you try and compare them against a leaf that you have or your rose bush that you have, It's very hard to pinpoint. So what I would say is if the rose is in the ground, if you are in clay soil, it's very likely that you don't have any nutrient deficiency. Clay soils are very mineral rich. Okay, so slow release fertilizer once a year and that quick release fertilizer, you probably do not want to do more than that. Anything else that you see on the leaves is probably something else happening. And you can bring in, some leaves to the master gardeners. They could help you diagnose. You could get a soil test done. Unfortunately, in California, we don't have an easy resource for soil tests. Other states seem to have like almost a free service. But soil test is certainly an option. If your rose is in a container and you're seeing these problems, check on the watering. Very often in a container, you water a rose and the water actually runs off between the pot, the container, and the soil. And so it's not really hydrating the soil or the plant. It's just running out. So you think you're watering, but the roses aren't getting enough water. And so make sure that's not happening. And then in pots, you can actually fertilize a lot more because what happens with containers is when you water containers, you're actually leaching out the nutrients. So it really depends. I hope that helped to answer, at least, gives you an idea how to approach the problem. Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
How to propagate that roses?
So the question is how to propagate roses. So I have a slide on that, but I can very quickly tell you. So first of all, we have a past seminar where Stu Dalton, who's also speaking in July's for the July seminar, he presented on how you can propagate a rose. He is a master propagator. I think what I have found with rose propagation, there are two things. It depends on the rose and it depends on the person. Some people just have the magic hand and they can stick a twig in the ground and it'll root. And if you're like me, yeah, it doesn't quite happen that way. Nothing roots. But it depends on the rose too. There are some roses, I mean, oh my gosh, a branch touches the ground and it'll root. And there are those that are stubborn and will not root whatever you try and do. So it's a hit and a miss with rose propagation. There are a couple of different methods, a lot of information on the web. The one that I have found to be most successful is you take a baggie, you fill it with perlite and vermiculite, and then stick your rose cutting in, close it up. Actually, I'll put the rose in. Actually, sometimes I will just use a cup like this, put holes, put in the vermiculite and perlite, and put into a baggie and seal it. Basically, you're trying to retain humidity and the moisture, and that helps. Also works great for hydrangeas.
Okay.
Yeah. You can do hardwood cutting, softwood cutting. So there are different approaches, a lot of information on the web. There's a burrito approach, and it's quite fascinating. Do want to say that when you propagate a rose from stem cutting, you get the same rose, right? It's a clone of the rose. So you will get exactly the same rose. If you grow roses from seeds, you are not guaranteed to get the same rose. It could be anything. Please do not fall for all the eBay and Etsy, I am selling you seeds for a blue rose. No, you'll be lucky that it is even a rose seed. And then you can propagate by grafting. So that requires skill. You have to have a root stock, so should have grown that on first. Then you get, the scion, and then you have to graft. Yeah. yeah, those who do it, it's just amazing to watch. I personally have never tried it. Maybe one day I will. All right. Yes, sorry. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so with the application of chicken manure, for example, could you explain, do you dig at a certain depth in the soil, a certain space away from the primary trunk? How does that work? And the second part of the question is coffee grounds beneficial to rose plants? 'Cause-
Okay, so two-part question. The first was applying chicken manure. Do you like dig into the soil? If so, how deep do you dig? Do you keep the manure away from the base of the rose bush? And the second part of the second question was coffee grounds. Is that helpful for roses? All right, so let's deal with the chicken manure first. So chicken manure, so if I have a preference as manures go, I actually prefer steer manure. And it's just not, not me. I find that the roses prefer steer manure over chicken manure. That said, if you have chicken manure and that's what you want to use, you can use chicken manure. I would be just a little bit careful. I would do maybe half of what the package says. So if it says, I'm just, 3 cups around the plant, I would do like a 1 cup kind of thing, and then see how the rose responds. And yes, I'm glad you brought it up because you never want to put manure right up on the base of the plant. Just keep it away, a good few inches. So the person saying, oops. So if you did that, did your rose die? No. Right? So again, it's best practice because something could go wrong, but it's one of those things. There's never, very rarely is there like a complete, no, don't do that, right? Yeah. It's just that, sometimes manure can burn, so you can, burn the base of the plant. There are feeder roots right there, so it could be, burn the feeder roots. It's just things like that.
Yes.
Yes.
Cow dung manure.
Yes, that is steer manure. So the person asked about cow dung manure. So in other countries outside the US, the steer manure is called cow dung manure. And yes, it is. In comparison, it's probably, like I said, much better than chicken manure. The roses respond to it better. And then the second part of your question regarding coffee grounds. So I have used coffee grounds. I think the roses did fine on them. I don't think there was damage, so there was no, ill effects. Did I see anything, super great? Did I write a paper on it? No. That said, my coffee grounds go towards the hydrangeas. I find hydrangeas to actually like coffee grounds. And so I turn all my pink hydrangeas blue by simply using coffee grounds. Yeah. All right. There was one more question in the room, and then I will come to the question on Zoom. Yeah.
There was actually a
Follow-up?
follow-up on 2 of the questions.
Mhm.
For similar to the coffee grounds, how about eggshells? And then the other question was on propagation. So I use air layering techniques for a lot of my bonsai. So I was wondering, would that also apply to some of the hardwood propagation techniques?
Right. Okay. So follow-up questions. So one, can you use eggshells, ground eggshells on your roses? And then the second part was, can you use air layering for propagation? So I'll answer the air layering first because it's the easier one. Yes, you can air layer. And actually, I should add that in. So thank you for mentioning that. I think you could probably get better success with air layering than trying to like do the bagging and things like that. So,
I don't
yeah,
know
thank you
what
for raising
is.
that.
What is?
Oh, so air layering is when you, and you can correct me where I go wrong. So you choose a stem, a nice, it shouldn't be softwood, hardwood. And usually it's great if it's like at a junction, but it doesn't have to be. And you nick the stem around, let's say, a leaf node. And then you put some kind of medium, it could be moss, soil, pack it in, and then, kind of tie it or put some maybe plastic around it to hold that medium around that place where you've nicked, and then keep it watered, moist. And then over time, roots develop. And then once the roots have fully formed, then you can cut below and you get a new plant. So thank you for that. Yeah. All right. So eggshells. Yes, people find eggshells beneficial. I'm a lazy gardener. I just go buy whatever's on sale. And you can get a lot of fertilizers that have not just nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, but have the macronutrients and micronutrients as well. So micro and macronutrients are things like calcium, iron, boron, magnesium, the other minerals that plants need besides NPK. And it's needed. So the question about nutrient deficiency is also an offshoot of that. So, you can get these fertilizers that have these additional nutrients, and you can just use that, because eggshells, I forget now what nutrient it provides, but it's an effort. Wash those eggshells, grind them up, put them on. And I have dogs, they're probably gonna I have skunks and I have raccoons. So the last thing I want is, yeah. All right, so let's get to the question on from Zoom. So can you please give some advice on growing roses in a pot? What types of pot and how big? And how to prepare the soil? Wonderful, great question. And I do have a slide. So Kara, sorry, but if you would. I think it's back, yeah. No, one more should be, yes. Can I grow roses in containers long term? The answer is yes. Actually, can you go one up? I think I start one higher. Yes, that's what I thought. I had one more slide. Okay, and they can grow very well in pots. I have actually started to grow a lot of my roses in pots because I have neighbors with a lot of trees, and I'm beginning to get a lot of root competition. And so I've unfortunately had roses, getting killed because the tree roots, especially in the drought years, right? So we continue to, do the best we can, give water to our roses, and those tree roots found that little spot where I was watering my roses. And I found one rose just not doing well. It finally just, died. And when I dug it up, I found the tree root had just circled the base of that rose. And so yes, I grow a lot of my roses in containers. So this rose that you see here is Golden Celebration. And it's been in the container now for, I would say, 20 years. So again, you choose the right rose. In this one, I had no choice. I had to grow it in a container. Well, I started growing it in a container. You want to choose something that's disease resistant. You want something that just likes to stay compact, right? Not one of those 10 feet by 5 feet growers. Preferably own root roses. So roses, you can buy them two types. They can be grafted. So the grafted roses are roses that are grown on a rootstock that is different from the actual rose that you're trying to grow. And so rootstock is generally very vigorous. And so own root is preferable because, you know, in a container, the roots don't have like the luxury to spread wherever they want. So you want an own root preferably. And then, you know, to the point, the question that was asked about the size of the container, the larger the container, the better. So at least 20 inches in diameter. Now, obviously, if you've started from a cutting, you want to have an appropriate size pot. And as the rose grows, you want to keep potting up. And so make sure you have adequate drainage. Lift the pot up on pot feet, or I use bricks. That's great in the winter months. In the summer months, you get the opposite problem where, you know, you can't water that pot enough to keep it hydrated, right? Sometimes I'm watering twice a day. So what I tend to do is I actually use you know, saucer, and I will let the pot sit in, you know, water and let the water be sucked up again. And then another thing which I like to caution people, avoid using a potting mix. Use potting soil. So most of the soil, that bag soil that you get in nurseries and big bag stores, they're now potting mix. Very inorganic materials, and then you know, bark, you know, fine bark and things like that. Potting soil where it's actually the base is mud. It's very contrary to what you'll find, let's say, container growing experts, what they will say. But, you know, just you have to do what the roses want, right? And so use potting soil. So for example, Lingso, they sell, you know, the potting soil. That's just a great place. If you are a member of the San Mateo Arboretum Society, you get a discount at Lingso. It's not on everything, but I think the soils, you do get a discount. All right, and then the next slide. So for the care and maintenance, so you do want to provide 5 to 6 hours of sunlight, but make sure that the pot itself doesn't overheat, because remember, now you've got these roots above ground, and when the sunlight hits and warms the pot, you can be cooking those roots. So what I like to do is I like to actually, Kara, if you mind going back one, you'll notice, look very carefully on the pot. I actually have burlap. So the left side of the picture is the south side. And so the sun hits the pot from the south side, and I've put burlap there to, you know, help the pot from not getting overheated. So, you know, that really helps. I've already talked about pot feet, and then allowing water to kind of stay in a saucer and wick up. And then you do want to fertilize more often in a pot. We also touched upon that earlier. And I have found, and okay, I'm saying this, do I get to doing it? No, I don't. The ideal, if you can fertilize every 2 to 3 weeks, okay, so here is where you want to do half strength. You do not want to do full strength fertilizer in the pot. So half strength, and then water well. And if you can fertilize every 2 to 3 weeks, or as often as you can get, once a month, 1.5 months, 2 months, but you definitely need to fertilize more often. And then on repotting, do repot every 3 to 5 years. I mean, it depends on the rose. If the rose is just vigorous and outgrowing its pot, you can, at the time of repotting, you can prune the roots and put back with fresh soil. I do want to, so that's what I had in growing containers, but that reminded me of something when we had that question about how deep do you dig for, you know, incorporating manure. I didn't quite answer that, and I want to answer it now. You have to be really careful, and you have to know your rose, Because if the rose is a grafted rose, and again, the grafted rose is when the desired rose is on a different rootstock, and somewhere I have the slide for that, but the most common, yeah, I think one up, it should be the first few set of slides. So yeah, one more, couple. Yeah. So back. One more, please. Okay. So here is a grafted rose. So you see the graft union in the picture, that knob which you see. So anything above, the canes that are coming above are the desired rose, and that shank and below is the rootstock or understock. That belongs to a completely different rose. And in the US, the most common rootstock is a rose called Dr. Huey. It's a red rose, a once bloomer. Now, it is notorious for suckering. What is suckering? It's sending up its own shoots. You don't want that. It's okay, I'm biased, but it's pretty ugly rose. It also gets a lot of disease. So it's not just the look of the plant, but once Dr. Huey takes over, it wants to send up its own roots. It will stop supplying nutrients to your desired rose. And that's when we say a rootstock takes over. Now, coming back to, the point about digging and incorporating in any fertilizer or any manure, things, compost. If you dig around Dr. Huey, it will send up suckers. Yes. So be very cautious when you are cultivating around a grafted rose, because most likely it's going to be Dr. Huey, and Dr. Huey is going to love all that stuff you've dug in right there, and every broken root is going to send up suckers. Okay, so I would just lay the compost or chicken manure down, water it in well, and walk away. All right. Yes, Pat.
Slide on fertilizers that you recommend.
Yes.
So,
Yes. That's probably it fights for the most asked question in my garden. I think it's right on top. Okay, so fertilizers, what do I recommend? Anything that's on sale and doesn't have high NPK numbers. Okay, I like to say roses cannot read labels. They will take what you give them.
but you said
Oh.
that means, like,
Oh, right at the appendix, right after that.
I don't know why it stopped.
Yeah.
At the end.
Okay. Yeah. So Miracle Grow for quick release, the blue stuff. Either the regular plant food or rose food, both work equally well. For organics, I really like anything organic that's a 10-10-10. Lily Miller, if you can find it. Unfortunately, I'm finding it harder and harder to source. Lowe's sometimes carries it. So that's organic. I really like that. And then Osmocote for slow release. So any slow release. I'm just disappointed. Osmocote changed their formulation. The balls are now plastic, which is really disappointing. But the stuff is so good. So, I've kind of stopped. I just go use the Lily Miller. And alpha pellets, as we talked earlier, helps with basal breaks. Yeah, and then don't forget the micronutrients. Read the package. If it says micronutrients, iron, chelated iron, magnesium, etc. Yeah, and sometimes you can mix some Epsom salts, 1 spoon in 2 gallons of water. That works too for magnesium.
What does Epsom salt contain?
Epsom salt is it's a salt of magnesium, so you basically get magnesium. magnesium hydroxide, if I remember my chemistry. All right, 2 quick questions. I'll take that first. I think your hand came up just a fraction faster.
Any recommendation on who to go to for like more specific cultivars and roses?
Great question. So who do you go to for recommendations of specific cultivars? I will answer that 2-pronged. Go to rose gardens, local rose gardens. Come to our Central Park Rose Garden. Susan does an amazing job of making sure that our labels are intact. For some reason, kids love to try and pull them out. And when we get a new rose, she immediately orders labels. I think a good public garden, when they display any plant, should have the plants labeled. And again, hats off to Susan for taking care of that. So go to public rose gardens, see which rose appeals to you. And if you can go several times in the year and see how the rose does over the year, and if it meets your expectations, disease resistance, number 1. And we select our roses first for disease resistance, second for flower power. So take a look. Then I can highly recommend Regan Nursery, Regan in Fremont. Amazing staff, very, very knowledgeable, amazing selection. Unfortunately, like every plant nursery that's not a big chain store, they are being forced to cut back. But their mail order is cutting back, but their website is amazing, a lot of information. They have an amazing selection of bare roots. So check in September, October, when their lists will come up, and talk to their staff. They're very knowledgeable. Regan Nursery, Regan in Fremont, Regan. And you can also send questions to us. We'd be happy to, yeah. And then Irv, sorry.
Yeah, how reliable, when they talk about a rose being disease resistant, how reliable are those, because it seems to me they all say they're.
Right. Okay. So the question was, how reliable are, those rose descriptions when it says the rose is disease resistant? So yes, it is like buying a car, right? So they will claim everything, but I think the good thing is today with the access that we have to knowledge over the web, you can actually read people, reviewing the roses. And again, I will strongly urge, remember rose growing is local. So take local advice. And that's why I said, visit the public rose gardens, because nothing beats seeing the rose growing right here where we live. Okay. All right. Anything on the Zoom? Okay. So with that, and I am so proud, Susan, it's the first time any seminar that I finished actually on time. No, she say 2 minutes late. When I've done 20 minutes late, I think 2 minutes is pretty good. All right.
It was excellent. Thank you, Archana, for this excellent, informative, and practical program. I always learn something new. Fantastic. So everyone will receive a link to a recording of the program, and we'll appreciate if you fill out the evaluation form. If you're online, people here have an evaluation form. Really appreciate if you complete it, and we really do look at them and see what programs you want us to have. And also some of the programs, check out our YouTube site. There's a link to that on the website, because programs that sometimes you may want to see we've already had. So our future seminar, it's going to be on July 13th. It's going to be the second Sunday of the month because of the holiday. And the speaker's was gonna be out of town, so it's gonna be on Sunday, July 13th, Gardening Safety Tools and Tips as We Age, with Stu Dalton. You can register for it online for Zoom or in person. And that's at sanmateoarboretum.org/classes-events. Also become a member of the Arboretum Society and receive a discount on workshops at various nurseries, local, huh?
Links
Links included, Wegmans, Green Fashion, Golden, and Blooming Vase, and Birder's Garden. I'm looking at Carol, because she'll tell me what I forgot. Anyway, it's on our website. Also, our nursery here, of course, 10%.
Our nursery.
Yeah. And if you're a volunteer, you get 20% off. So we are always looking for new volunteers. You can let us know about that on your evaluation form. Nursery, education committee. There's lots of different opportunities.
And Rose Garden.
Oh, yeah, Rose Garden. And we are going to have training a little bit later this year for new Rose Garden volunteers. Be a limited number, which is just relatively small public garden. So we don't need a lot of volunteers, but we do need some. Yes, sir?
Susan, is it possible to send out all of her slides, not just the presentation?
I can, so I don't always share the question and answers because there's always some caveat, like the question on old roses, right? Like there's always something. So those are just like bullet points for me to remember what to say. So I don't always share that, but we can, let me think of some way to put it into like more. Shareable.
There's a lot of information as we were flipping through, that I thought it would be interesting, but it's not part of today's presentation.
Can we maybe request specific? Because I saw a couple of.
Sure. Yeah.
It will be recorded. You can hit pause on the part. So. Where you
Yeah,
scroll
so
through,
you
yeah.
can get it, yeah. And then if you have any questions, if something is ambiguous or the thing, just reach out, happy to clarify. And, we could even do just a Rose Q&A, go through that. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yep, put that on the list. Yeah, huge thank you again to Archana for today's program, to Kara for our technical assistance. She did a great job. And for handling the technical part of the program. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. The program is now finished.
Thank you.